Pavia, Italy, February 24th, 1525. The finest cavalry in Europe charges across an open park at dawn. These are French gendarmes, armored head to toe in handcrafted steel that costs more than a peasant village. Their horses are bred for war, their lances polished, their bloodlines older than most kingdoms. They have trained since childhood. They have never lost a charge. They slam into a tree line and something hits them. Not swords, not lances, not arrows, smoke. Then a sound like thunder cracking from the ground. In under 10 minutes, the flower of French chivalry lies face down in the mud. Dead. Not from noble combat, from lead balls the size of a man's thumb, fired from 60 yards away. The men who killed them weren't knights. They weren't trained warriors. They were Spanish conscripts, farmers, cobblers, men pulled from fields 3 weeks before the battle. Most of them had never held a sword. What they held instead was something else entirely. A heavy, ugly, inaccurate metal tube propped on a wooden stick. A musket. This is not a story about a weapon. This is the story of how a crude metal tube ended 1,000 years of chivalry, erased the aristocracy from the battlefield, and made every man on earth equal in war. But the musket didn't begin in a European armory. Its story starts 1,000 years earlier and 6,000 miles east in 9th century China, where Taoist monks searching for the elixir of eternal life accidentally created the most destructive substance the world had ever seen. They were looking for immortality. They found the opposite. Around 850 AD, in the mountains of Tang Dynasty China, Taoist alchemists were mixing substances in stone bowls. They had been at it for centuries, combining minerals, metals, herbs, anything, chasing the legendary elixir of life. One recipe called for saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, ground together in specific proportions. The mixture did not grant eternal life. It exploded. The earliest known written warning about this combination comes from a Chinese text around 850 AD, the Zhenyuan Miaodao Yaolue, and it doesn't celebrate the discovery. It warns against it. Smoke and flames result, the text says, so that the hands and faces of workers have been burned, and even the whole house burned down. They had invented gunpowder, by accident, while trying not to die. For 2 centuries, gunpowder remained a curiosity, used in fireworks, smoke signals, crude incendiary devices. Then the Song dynasty militarized it. The Wujing Zongyao, a military manual published in 1044, recorded the first gunpowder formulas designed specifically for war. Fire arrows, smoke bombs. And then something new, the fire lance. The fire lance was a bamboo tube packed with gunpowder, strapped to a spear. Light it, point it at the enemy, and a jet of flame shoots out for 5 seconds. Terrifying. Theatrical. But not lethal enough. Then someone, no one knows who, put a projectile inside the tube. A stone, a piece of metal, a handful of broken pottery. That was the moment. The fire lance became a gun. By the 1200s, the Mongol Empire had carried gunpowder west along the Silk Road. By the 1300s, crude metal hand cannons, short iron tubes mounted on wooden handles, appeared across Europe and the Middle East. They were heavy, they were unreliable, they exploded in the shooter's hands as often as they hit the target, but they punched through armor, and that mattered more than anything else. Hold on to that detail, a weapon that could punch through armor. It will take 200 years, but that detail is going to tear apart the entire feudal order of Europe. Then, in 1503, something happened in southern Italy that should have ended knightly warfare overnight. The hand cannon evolved. By the mid-1400s, European gunsmiths had developed the matchlock mechanism, a burning slow match clamped in a metal arm that swung into a pan of gunpowder when the trigger was pulled. The weapon was called an arquebus. It was lighter than the hand cannon, more reliable, and a soldier could aim it with both hands. It was still slow, one shot every 30 to 40 seconds if the soldier didn't fumble. In rain, the match went out, and the weapon became a very expensive club. The accuracy was terrible. Hit a man-sized target at 100 yards and you were lucky. But something strange was happening on European battlefields. The arquebus was winning. At the Battle of Cerignola in April 1503, Spanish commander Gonzalo Fernández de Córdoba placed his arquebusiers behind a ditch and an earthen rampart. The French sent in their heavy cavalry, gendarmes in full-plate armor, the most expensive fighting force in the world. The horsemen charged, the arquebusiers fired, the French cavalry shattered. The Duke of Nemours, commander of the French forces, fell dead from his horse. Cerignola became the first major battle in history, decided primarily by gunpowder small arms, not by cannons, not by siege engines, by men standing in a line with metal tubes, firing lead into charging horses. The lesson was clear, but Europe didn't learn it. Not yet. Knights were not just soldiers. They were a political class. They were the sons of kings. They were the entire justification for feudal aristocracy. The idea that noble blood produced superior warriors, that the man on horseback was naturally above the man on foot. The arquebus said otherwise, but admitting that meant admitting that centuries of hierarchy were built on a lie. So Europe kept sending knights into battle, and 22 years after Cerignola, at a hunting park outside the Italian city of Pavia, the lie finally collapsed in the most spectacular way imaginable. What happened at Pavia wasn't just a defeat. It was the single morning that killed an entire class of warrior. And the man who lost the most was a king. What happened at Pavia wasn't a battle. It was an execution. February 24th, 1525. King Francis I of France, 30 years old, tall, athletic, obsessed with chivalry, is besieging the Italian city of Pavia with the largest army in Europe. He has Swiss pikemen, French crossbowmen, and his personal pride. The Compagnies d'Ordonnance, 3,000 gendarmes in full plate armor, the most devastating cavalry force on the continent. Across the field, the Spanish Imperial Army under Charles de Lannoy is outnumbered and starving. But they have something Francis doesn't take seriously. 1,500 arquebusiers, peasant infantry trained for weeks, not years, armed with matchlock firearms that cost a fraction of a knight's armor. At dawn, Francis sees a gap. He orders his gendarmes to charge. It is the last great cavalry charge of the medieval world. The French knights thunder across the Mirabello Park, lances lowered, armor gleaming. They are magnificent. They are riding into a slaughter. The Spanish arquebusiers are hidden behind walls and trees at the edge of the park. They wait. They fire. The first volley hits the front rank. Horses scream. Armored men crash to the ground. The gendarmes can't see where the shots are coming from, just smoke, noise, and men falling. The second volley hits, the third. Knights pile into the bodies of knights ahead of them. The charge disintegrates. In less than 30 minutes, the cream of French chivalry is destroyed. Over 5,000 French soldiers die. Francis I himself is dragged from his horse, his armor dented by arquebus balls, his face bloodied. He is captured. A king, taken prisoner on a battlefield by peasants with metal tubes. It hadn't happened in Europe since the Battle of Poitiers in 1356. The shock reverberated across every court on the continent. Not because France lost. France had lost before. But because of how France lost. The most expensive, most trained, Most elite warriors in the world had been annihilated by the cheapest soldiers imaginable. The reaction was denial, then adaptation, then despair. Armorers tried to save the knight. They made plate armor thicker, calling it proof armor, tested at the forge by firing a musket ball at the breastplate. If the ball didn't penetrate, the armor was stamped with a dent as proof. You can still see these dents in museum armor today. But thicker armor meant heavier armor. Heavier armor meant slower movement. Slower movement meant an easier target. A full suit of proof armor weighed over 25 kilograms. The horse carrying it needed its own armor. The horse carrying armor needed to be bigger. The bigger horse was slower. The slower horse was a bigger target. It was an arms race that the knight could not win. But killing the knight on the battlefield was only the beginning. What the musket really killed was an idea, the idea that some men were born to fight, and others were born to serve. And that idea didn't die easily. Then something happened that no noble family in Europe saw coming. War became cheap. Here is the number that ended feudalism on the battlefield. A musket cost a fraction of what a knight cost. A knight's full armor ran over 1,000 ducats. His war horse, another 300. His training, 20 years. His lineage, generations. A peasant with a musket needed 3 weeks. That wasn't a military equation. It was a social revolution with a trigger. The Spanish understood first. In the 1530s, they developed the tercio, a formation of roughly 3,000 men combining pikemen and musketeers into a single fighting unit. The pikemen formed a dense square, their 5-meter pikes bristling outward like a porcupine. Among them and around them stood the musketeers, firing from the protection of the pike wall while the pikemen kept cavalry at bay. The tercio was not elegant. It was not romantic. It did not produce heroes. It was devastating. For over a century, the Spanish tercio dominated every battlefield in Europe. The Battle of Mühlberg, the wars in the Netherlands, the campaigns in Italy. Wherever the tercio marched, it won. And the men doing the killing were not aristocrats. They were common soldiers, paid, trained, replaceable. The knight didn't vanish overnight. He adapted. Former cavalry officers became infantry commanders. Noble sons traded their lances for pistols and their war horses for staff positions. The aristocracy survived, but it survived by abandoning the very thing that had defined it. The man on horseback, charging with lance and sword, was finished. Meanwhile, the weapon kept evolving. The matchlock gave way to the snaphance. The snaphance gave way to the flintlock, faster ignition, more reliable in rain, lighter to carry. Maurice of Nassau, the Dutch military reformer, introduced volley fire in the 1590s. Soldiers in ranks, the front rank fires and steps back to reload while the second rank fires. A continuous wall of lead. The musket was still wildly inaccurate. It still took 30 seconds to reload. It still misfired in wet weather. So why did it keep winning? The answer wasn't in the weapon. It was in the physics. And no one would understand that for another 2 centuries. 3 weeks of training, a fraction of the cost, volley fire. The musket didn't just outfight the knight, it outpriced him. But the musket didn't stay in Europe. By the late 1500s, it had crossed every ocean and ended every mounted warrior tradition on Earth. In 1543, a Chinese junk carrying Portuguese traders was blown off course and landed on the island of Tanegashima off the southern coast of Japan. The traders carried with them 2 matchlock firearms. Within a decade, Japanese swordsmiths were manufacturing their own, and within a generation, Japan had more firearms than any country in Europe. In 1575, at the Battle of Nagashino, The warlord Oda Nobunaga deployed 3,000 musketeers behind wooden palisades. Across the field, the Takeda cavalry, legendary mounted samurai, the finest horsemen in Japan, charged. Nobunaga's musketeers fired in rotating volleys. 3 ranks. Fire. Step back. Reload. Fire. Step back. Reload. The Takeda cavalry hit the palisades and the musket fire at the same time. They were slaughtered. The samurai, centuries of tradition, the warrior code of Bushido, a lifetime of training with the sword, fell to farmers with 3 weeks of shooting practice. The same pattern. The same result. Halfway around the world from Pavia. It happened everywhere. Ottoman janissaries, among the first standing armies to adopt firearms, used muskets to shatter Mamluk cavalry at the Battle of Marj Dabik in 1516. Mughal Emperor Babur used matchlocks and field cannons to destroy the Delhi Sultanate's war elephants and cavalry at Panipat in 1526. In the Americas, conquistadors carrying firearms met warriors who had never heard thunder that came from a man's hands. The musket didn't just kill the European knight. It killed the samurai. It killed the Mamluk horseman. It killed the steppe warrior. It killed every tradition on earth that believed a man on horseback with a blade was the supreme weapon of war. One weapon, every continent. The same lesson. Courage, training, and breeding mean nothing when a lead ball traveling at 1,000 feet per second hits you in the chest. The idea that some men were born to fight died on every continent. The musket didn't care about bloodlines. It didn't care about training. It didn't care about honor. It only cared about physics. And those physics, the actual science of why a crude metal tube could defeat the most expensive armor ever made, would remain a mystery for centuries. The answer, when it finally came, was brutally simple. For centuries, commanders knew the musket worked. What they didn't know was why. On paper, the musket should have been useless. A smoothbore barrel. No rifling, no spin on the ball. Accuracy against a single man-sized target. Roughly 50 to 75 yards. Beyond 100 yards, hitting anything specific was a matter of luck, not skill. Rate of fire, 2 to 3 rounds per minute for a trained soldier. In rain, it didn't fire at all. The flint wore out. The barrel fouled with residue after a dozen shots. The weapon misfired 1 out of every 5 attempts. Compare that to a longbow, 10 to 12 arrows per minute, accurate to 200 yards in the hands of an expert, functional in any weather. So why did the musket replace the bow? Why did it kill the knight when the arrow couldn't? The answer is energy. A longbow war arrow weighs roughly 2 to 3 ounces and travels at around 180 feet per second. A musket ball, .69 caliber, just under an inch in diameter, weighs about 1 ounce and travels at roughly 1,000 feet per second. Kinetic energy isn't just about speed. It's speed squared, multiplied by mass divided by 2. That squared makes all the difference. Even though the musket ball is lighter than the arrow, it moves more than 5 times faster. And because energy scales with the square of velocity, a musket ball carries more than 10 times the kinetic energy of a longbow arrow. It delivers all of that energy to a contact point the size of a fingertip. An arrow spreads its force across a broad head. A musket ball concentrates everything into a dense lead sphere that deforms on impact, mushrooming into the target. At 100 yards, a musket ball punches through plate armor. Not sometimes, reliably. The same plate armor that could stop a sword, deflect a lance, absorb an arrow. Against a musket ball, it was sheet metal. Armorers understood the problem even before physicists did. They kept making armor thicker. But the math was merciless. To reliably stop a musket ball at combat range, a breastplate would need to weigh over 20 kilograms for the breastplate alone. Add the backplate, the helmet, the arm and leg protection, and the full suit exceeds 40 kilograms. No man can fight in that. No horse can carry that and charge. The knight was trapped in an equation he couldn't solve. More armor meant more weight. More weight meant less speed. Less speed meant a bigger target. A bigger target meant more hits. More hits meant death. Physics killed the knight. The musket was just the delivery system. And so the crude metal tube did exactly what it promised. It ended 1,000 years of chivalry, from the mounted warriors of Charlemagne to the gendarmes of Francis III, a millennium of armored horsemen, destroyed not by a superior warrior, but by a cheaper one. The knight charged at Pavia, at Cerignola, at Nagashino, at Marge d'Abic. He charged and he died. And eventually he stopped charging. It erased the aristocracy from the battlefield. The feudal contract, the lord fights, the peasant serves, collapsed the moment a peasant could kill a lord. The man on horseback wasn't superior. He was expensive. And expensive doesn't survive cheap. And it made every man on earth equal in war. A knight trained for 20 years. A musketeer trained for 3 weeks. On a battlefield in 1525, those 20 years and those 3 weeks produced the same result. A man standing with a weapon ready to kill. Except the musketeer was easier to replace. And there were more of him. Today, every modern military on earth descends from the musket's revolution. Not from the knight. The infantry platoon, the drill formation, the standardized weapon, the professional army of common soldiers, all of it traces back to the moment someone handed a metal tube to a farmer and said, "Aim, fire, reload." The knight left behind castles, coats of arms, and romantic legends. The musket left behind the modern world. Every army that exists today, every soldier in every uniform on every continent, every National Guard, every Marine Corps, every infantry regiment marching in formation, they are all descendants of the farmer who stood in a line at Pavia with a metal tube and 3 weeks of training. Not the knight. The farmer. The history of warfare is not the story of the strongest or the bravest or the noblest. It is the story of the cheapest effective weapon in the hands of the most common man. The musket proved that, and the world never went back. When you see a soldier stand in formation today, you are not watching the legacy of chivalry. You are watching the legacy of a slow, ugly, inaccurate metal tube that took 30 seconds to reload and changed everything. You are watching the slow fire that killed the knight. If this story changed the way you see the battlefield, if you didn't know that the rifle in every army on earth traces back to a peasant's metal tube that ended 1,000 years of chivalry, hit subscribe. We uncover the real histories behind the objects that shaped civilization. Drop a comment. What weapon or invention from history do you think changed the world more than the musket? Was it the stirrup, the printing press, the atomic bomb? Tell us. Because every one of those has a story like this one. And if you're still here, like this video. Not for the algorithm. Because a farmer with 3 weeks of training just defeated a knight with 20 years of it. That deserves a like.